Hello and welcome back to our journey through the U.S. Constitution. Here's our fourth and final installment of reading through the U.S. Constitution. We're going to be covering the rest of the articles of the U.S. Constitution because they're just not as long as the first three. So remember, in part one of our series, we covered the preamble or the introductory paragraph of the Constitution and Article 1, which establishes the legislator, and by the writings of the founders was the most important part of the U.S. Constitution. Part 2 of our journey looked at Article 2, which established the office of the president, and then Part 3 looked at the Article 3, which establishes the Supreme Court. So let's get into it. Articles 4, 5, 6, and 7. Article 4 protects the rights of people and of the states and explains how we get new states. Article 5 is how we amend the Constitution. You'll notice even the founders realized that this document was not going to be perfect and we're going to have to fix some things in it. And so everyone who's out like we should listen to what the founding fathers wrote, we should also remember that they put in Article 5 because they're like, hey, we're going to make a mistake. We should be able to fix it later on. Article 6 says that all representatives and government workers must uphold the Constitution and that there'll be no religious test. And we'll talk about why that's important for the insertion in the Constitution when we get to Article 6. And then Article 7 just is the signatures of who ratified it and who approved it. So let's get started. Article 4, Section 1. Full faith and credit shall be given in each state to the public acts, records, and judicial proceedings of every other state, and the Congress may by general law prescribe the manner in which such acts, records, and proceedings shall be approved and the effect thereof. Basically says what one state legislator passed has to be kind of acknowledged by all other states, and that all states are kind of seen as equal in the eyes of the U.S. government, and that all those records have to be available for everyone else. Section 2. The citizen of each state shall be entitled to all privileges and immunities of all of citizens in the several states. Basically, if you can do it in one state, you should be able to do it in several states. It's saying that the laws should not be preventing you from living your life, liberty and pursuit of happiness, as we read about in the Declaration of Independence, all of that. It's like each state should uphold that, and there might be a few nuanced differences between how states do it, but it should be pretty much the same across the board. The second paragraph goes in, a person charged in any state with treason, felony, or other crime who shall flee from justice and be found in another state shall on demand of executive authority of the state from which he fled be delivered up to be removed to the state having jurisdiction of the crime. Basically says you cannot commit a crime in, say, Kansas and then flee to Colorado and not face justice. The authorities in Colorado have to bring you back to Kansas, and so you can face trial there. And then the last paragraph is no person held to service or labor in one state under the laws thereof, escaping into another in consequence of any law or regulation therein, be discharged from such service or labor, but shall be delivered up on claim of the party to whom such service or labor may be due. Now you notice this section's in blue because this is superseded by the 13th Amendment, the one abolishing slavery. Because this phrase, no person held to service or labor in one state, just basically means no person in slavery. And already, even though slavery was pretty widespread during the colonial times, it's already starting to kind of disappear in some states and not in others. And people and enslaved people are trying to escape because nobody likes being enslaved. And so they wrote into the Constitution that like you can't escape and expect freedom, you're going to be sent back. So that's what's kind of happening with that section. But it got removed from the Constitution when the 13th Amendment happened. Section 3. New states may be admitted by Congress into this union, but no new state shall be formed or erected within the jurisdiction of any other state, nor any state be formed by the junction of two or more states or parts of states without the consent of the legislator of the states concerned as well as the Congress. The Congress shall have the power to dispose of and make all needful rules and regulations respecting the territory or other property belonging to the United States, and nothing in this Constitution shall be so construed as to prejudice any claims of the United States or any other particular state. Basically means no new states can be formed by taking land from other states. So we couldn't form a state here in Durango by taking land from Durango and southern Utah and northern Arizona and northern New Mexico, unless we get the legislative branches of Utah, Colorado, Arizona, and New Mexico to all agree that that is how they want to do it. All right. And you need both the states and you need Congress to approve it. But new states and territories can be totally approved and be admitted by Congress into the Union. And then Section 4 of Article 4, the United States shall guarantee to every state in this union a republican form of government, and shall protect each of them against invasion and on application of the legislature or the executive when the legislature cannot be convened against domestic violence. It basically means here that the United States shall guarantee each state has an elected form of government. Okay, no state can be a monarchy. The use of the word republican form of government here refers to the fact that a citizen will vote for a representative, and the representative will then represent all those citizens in the state house. It's not talking about the political parties of Republican and Democrat. So every state has to have an elected system of government, and the United States will protect the states against invasion or against any internal revolts. So if there's an internal revolt, remember, like Shays' Rebellion in Massachusetts, the United States will send the army to help put that down so that the state doesn't get any harm. All right, but you'll notice it's the legislative branch of each state, not the executive branch. So the senators and state reps who represent us who have to ask for that help, not the governor of the state. So every state gets to have a voting government, and every state gets to be protected from outside invasion or inside violence. All right, here we are, Article 5. The Congress, whenever 2/3 of both houses shall deem it necessary, shall propose amendments to this Constitution, or on the application of the legislature of 2/3 of several states, shall call a convention for proposing amendments, which in either case shall be valid to all intents and purposes as part of this Constitution, when ratified by the legislature of 3/4 of several states, or by convention in 3/4 thereof, as the one or the other mode of ratification may be proposed by Congress, provided that no amendment which may be made prior to the year 1808 shall in any manner affect the first 4 clauses in the 9th section of the first article, and that no state without its consent shall be deprived of its equal suffrage in the Senate. So it's basically saying we aren't going to be perfect. We're going to need to fix this, and whatever amendment, if it's whether it's 2/3 of the House of Representatives in the Senate or 2/3 of all of the states think they need to come together and propose the amendment, we will propose it, write the language up, draft it, and then send it out so that 3/4 of all of the states will approve it. And once that happens, it will be considered valid and as a part of the Constitution. So every amendment is an important and valid part of this Constitution. And it's just saying that you can't augment in Section 9 of the first article, or you can't take away the senators of states in these amendments that we will be proposing. But everything else, if you think we forgot something, we need to change it, then we should change it. And that's something a lot of people forget when they look at the constitutional history. The Founding Fathers realized they're not going to be perfect, and so they put this in here specifically because they knew things would change. All right, Article 6. All debts contracted and engagements entered into before the adoption of this Constitution shall be as valid against the United States under this Constitution as under the Confederation. Remember the Articles of Confederation. So it basically says everything we did during the Articles of Confederation still hold true. It doesn't cancel out our debts or our treaties or our ambassadors. The second paragraph. This Constitution and the laws of the United States, which shall be made in pursuance thereof, and all treaties made or which shall be made under the authority of the United States, shall be the supreme law of the land, and judges in every state shall be bound thereby, anything in the Constitution or the laws of any states to the contrary notwithstanding. And then so it basically means this is the law, and the judges have to abide by these laws. You can't just ignore them. And then the final paragraph, the senators and representatives before mentioned and the members of several state legislatures and all executive and judicial officers both of the United States and of the several states shall be bound by an oath or affirmation to support this Constitution. All right, so every government official has to support and uphold the Constitution. But no religious test shall ever be required as a qualification to any office or public trust under the United States. We have to remember this Constitution is being written only about 100 years after the end, a little over 100 years after the end of the religious wars that happened in Europe, where Protestants and Catholics were fighting over each other. And people said, well, we don't want Catholics being in power, or we don't want Protestants being in power, and would test people and force them, or we don't want Jews being in power, or we don't want Muslims being in power, and they would test and force people to give up their religion to be in that office. And that's something that kings and queens could do at this time. And the United States says, nope, you can be whatever you want, you have whatever worship you want, as long as you are going to swear by oath that you will support this Constitution and everything in here. And so that's why this specific line is being put in here, is because the founders knew their history and knew that the religious wars were a really, really bloody and dangerous time, and they didn't want to get anyone thinking that, like, to serve in the government you have to be a certain religion or anything like that. Nope, they were like, anyone can be of any religion and come and serve in the government. So you can be a Quaker, you can be a Calvinist, you can be a Lutheran, you can be a Jewish person, you can be a Muslim, you could be Catholic, and all of those are okay. And then finally, Article VII, the ratification of the Convention of 9 states shall be sufficient for the establishment of this Constitution between the states so ratifying the same. And then the second paragraph is a bunch of things that got changed, and William Jackson was the secretary and was done in the convention by the unanimous consent of the states present on the 17th day of September in the year of our Lord 1787, and of the independence of the United States of America, the 12th, in witness whereof we have hereunto subscribed our names. And you notice George Washington was the president and deputy from Virginia, and then we have all of our other representatives from Delaware, Maryland, Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Connecticut, New York, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania. And you'll see all these kind of famous names popping up in here, like Alexander Hamilton and Benjamin Franklin, Roger Sherman, all these people who really put a lot into what the United States was going to be. So that's our journey through all 7 articles of the Constitution. You can now say by watching these videos that you have read and listened to all of the Constitution and know a lot about how our U.S. government forms. So thanks for watching. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments or go ahead and send me an email. And I hope you guys have a great day.